Well, welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Luxray in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So I'm still trying to figure out which Pokemon to do when for the movesets, but I feel like I'm leaning more towards Pokemon that interest me and just figuring out how they work, as well as just like strong and popular Pokemon. Cool thing about Luxray, really popular, but very sad for Luxray fans because it's mostly just looked down as a hard-to-use Pokemon, and it really is. So we take a look at the stats. 120 attack. Pretty good, not the best, but actually just strong. However, 70 speed. How do you do anything with 70 speed? That feels unplayable almost. Or is it? Because unless you've looked into the speed tiers, and I haven't, I play setup tanks. My goal is to get outsped because I'm not playing those shenanigans, tank up, and then win. So I don't really care too much. However, I was baffled when I saw where Luxray lands because it's faster than 130 speed Pokemon. That 70 base speed, Scarf, 1.5, positive, so jolly, 201. Jolteon, positive, no modifier, 130 speed, 200. A lot of people know this, and like a lot of speed things are just intuitive, but 70 seems low. Like 70 is like the barrier of, nah, you can't throw a Scarf on that because that just doesn't work. So I've just kind of like given up on the speed tiers meaning anything for the Luxray, but actually, you want to do it. And the math checks out. Half of 134 is 67, that's 201. You get a Jolteon, Jolteon's 200, level 50, level 50. Nah? And then it gets messed up because these numbers are so razor thin, and also this is where it gets screwy because if you're playing in Simulator, it's going to be level 100, I think, for Pokemon Showdown. Like, it's all default to level 100, but if you're playing Battle Spot or Flat Rules, which is pretty much everything in the main series games, like in the games themselves, it's actually going to lose in the level 100 match. So we got 262. 394, but half of that is 131, and that brings us to 393? So, Luxray, I'm not gonna say Luxray sucks, like, oh, doesn't hit the 130 tier, sucks in level 100, but I'm like, wait a second, Luxray kinda strong, and the cool thing is, Pokemon Showdown's updated to Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, so we can actually sort by speed, where we have unreleased Deoxys, Ninjask, Electrode, Aerodactyl. Wait, that's it? 5 Pokemon that are 130 speed or higher? And Luxray beats 3 of them? So, Luxray comes in, claps the Flying type Aerodactyl, claps the Flying type Crobat, and has no fear of Jolteon whatsoever because it's a resisted hit on the Electric or Shadow Ball. And then Electrode Ninjask, those are on their own shenanigans. Ninjask is just a cheesy baton pass cheeser Pokemon, and Electrode doesn't matter most of the time. Maybe, I don't know. So, Luxray is good. Alright, let's go into the movesets. We got Wild Charge, we got Crunch, Ice Fang, Fire Fang, maybe Iron Tail, maybe Facade. I don't know where the moveset goes, because it does feel weird when you're like, alright, we have Wild Charge on all its damage, we have Crunch, and then you're running Double Fang for like the super low base power, but man, Iron Tail spooks the hell out of me. 75% accuracy. I don't play those games. I don't like that. But that's some fat damage. Like you hit a fairy type Pokemon that it's incomparable to things. Because the weird thing is when you start breaking down moves, stab moves with high base power versus low base power super effective moves, like that's where people stop like just remembering how the game works and they'll just throw out the inefficient move. So Wild Charge with stab goes to 135 power. Ice Fang super is 130. So minus the recoil, but whenever you break it down, it's like, okay, so Wild Charge just does more damage than super effective Ice Fang. So you need that 4x, which makes sense. Like, you're going to be finding that on Garchomp, Dragonite, Gliscor. So yeah, the Ice is exclusively 4x coverage. Crunch as a super effective hit works, so we don't have to worry about that. But what about Facade? Like, is there a realm in the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl meta? Like, does Toxic Spikes get played? Are you going to be eating stray Will-O-Wisps? Are burns common? Because if they are, then you want the Facade, especially for the burn, because Facade ignoring burn is absurd, and then you have 140 base power. But let's say you get poisoned. That's 170 power versus 135 power, maybe, if you have... Actually, no, then the Guts is actually not... Wait, let's ignore Guts. Let's say you're just running Intimidate. Well, I just want to make this raw about, like, Facade Wild Charge. Is that worth it? Because it's not a guarantee that you're ending up statused, but you might. And the paralysis doesn't matter because you're a Luxray. So that's kind of weird. However, this is where Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl shows its weirdness. Toxic, not splashable. Like, it's still the same thing from Pokemon Sword and Shield, to where Toxic was just removed from every Pokemon moveset when it was pretty much on every Pokemon moveset. So Toxic stalling, very uncommon. Like, some of these are Toxic stall Pokemon, but nowhere near what we've seen. Like, Glasgow loses Toxic. That's spooky for the Glasgow. I don't know where do we go from here? I don't know. So yeah, like, you're not gonna just randomly get Toxic stalled out and then need the facade damage. But what about Guts? Like, Scarf Guts, if you just throw yourself into a Will-O-Wisp, or if you're, like, there's no way Toxic Spikes is viable. Like, you just can't run Toxic Spikes, because one, it's a suck move to begin with. Injury Hazards are way overrated and suck, just like Score Shield and Pokemon Unite. But outside of that, it's like, if you find you're getting status, you run the Guts, and I don't know, then you need the Facade. If not, you have some other weird options. Just go Intimidate, Switching, and then you just trade with Pokemon. Because you're one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. And unless Infernape kind of gets into the Greninja situation where it has to run Scarf to survive, like, okay, you come in, you Intimidate the Infernape, it can still throw an Overheat on you, but the game's weird, so you don't even know what's going to happen. But, like, you Intimidate them, and then you outspeed, don't one-shot them, take a hit, KO, and then you're faster than anything else they can bring. Is Luxray a 1-for-1 plus Pokemon? Nah, it's Luxray. Okay, let's go and check out this little thing called reality. A lot of people online struggle with it, but let's see what happens when Luxray comes in, Wild Charges, Infernape in the neutral, and then shenanigans happen. So, Life Orb, Iron Fist, well, Iron Fist doesn't matter for the Flare Blitz, but you eat a Flare Blitz, and that's just gonna be a lot of damage. High chance to KO. Like, you get the outspeed and you chunk in that damage, but then you take recoil and then you just die to the Flare Blitz. But what if it's Focus Sash? So, Focus Sash was effectively no item. You take a chunk of recoil, but it's not enough to kill you in the worst case scenario. As we talked about that Overheat, like, if you Intimidate them, so we go -1 attack. Or actually, no, I think the Intimidate is already... No, okay, there it is. That's it, factoring in. Oh, they added a button. It used to just be, like, default now. So, we have that. It's like, yeah, okay, so the Intimidate drops to around 50%. Overheat is just not ridiculous compared to, like, the attack investment and 0 special attack and whatever. And even if it's, like, a weird set, you're not really taking too much damage. So, like, yeah, barring the Mach Punch, you win. So, like, Wild Charge, fresh Pokemon, damage. You are Scarf Locked, but I mean, at that point, you're an Intimidate Pokemon. If you switch out with, like, a small amount of health, you just come in, Intimidate, throw down some damage, and now the opposing Pokemon is -1 attack and very hurt. How hurt can they be? Let's find out. We got Scizor. Scizor eats a Fire Fang. Now, this is actually factoring in Rivalry, because for some reason, Other counts as Rivalry, but if we go to the Intimidate, then we can see that the numbers kind of change around. Yeah, so I mean, like, not enough to one-shot the Scizor. And depending on if Intimidate's on the table or not, like, you slow down a Swords Dance, the Bullet Punch just doesn't matter. I don't know who's running Sand Tomb. That's just some Smogon nonsense. So, I mean, like, wow, okay, what if we're not Intimidated and we just, like, you come into a +2. Bullet Punch. Ain't it, and Fire Fang's still doing a lot of damage. Alright, +4 Scizor's unstoppable. Nah, you tank those. And then you drop to +3. You tank those. Again, knockoff and, like, other things are weird. Like, whatever Scizor's up to. But I mean, like, the game might not necessarily be over if you can get that Fire Fang in there. And let's say we go into a Rivalry setup, because that's where Scizor, or not Scizor, that's where Luxray gets weird. Alright. We have an almost 90% chance to KO a Scizor, and we just outspeed it. And that's like the weird, or not outspeed it, but I mean, like, we eat any Bullet Punch, and if it's not like if it's not throwing the Bullet Punch, Scizor's speed is somehow more trash than Luxray's, and the 70 speed works once again. It's like you're forcing it into a Bullet Punch that wherever it's at isn't really going to be like the spookiest thing out there, and that's also just like weird. I don't know. I don't know what this Pokemon is. So now we can talk about the Rivalry, because there's multiple stages to learning about shenanigans. Like, we're still on the first moveset, guys. I don't know what's going on with Luxray. Is it B tier? But since it's fast and trades well, does that make it A tier? Because it seems reliable enough. But I think it can also just get, like, hard setup on. Like, Pokemon comes in, goes Curse, or Iron Defense, or is just a physical wall. And now you don't have a Pokemon as long as that wall exists. So that could be hard. It's more of an anti-sweeper Pokemon. I don't know how that fits onto your team, if there's a better one out there for your team, or the roles fitting in. So, I mean, like, okay, yeah, Luxray, viable. Like, at the very least, this is strangely viable. But now let's talk about abilities. So, one of the meta things you start learning in Pokemon is, oh, 0 attack IVs because foul play is a thing. After that, you start learning about gender discrepancies because male Pokemon are just more common. It's kind of like how physical is innately more powerful in Pokemon, or just like you see higher attack and defense values and offensive like powers than you do for like special and special defense and stuff. Well, there's just more male Pokemon. You just look at that on starter Pokemon, where the starter Pokemon has 87.5% chance to be male or something, and it's a very low chance of being a female. So you want to technically have female Pokemon if you're using Attract. But if you're not using Attract, then you want to have male Pokemon, but you also want to have female Pokemon because they might have their female Pokemon. But then you just kind of go back into the male Pokemon because male are more common. Most people aren't going to be thinking about this, so the male Luxray just has like a 60% chance of getting the rivalry. However, 0.75, that sounds bad. Or is it? Wait a second. Again, this is when you start getting into deep Pokemon. So we go back to Infernape, we go back to Rivalry, and then we change it to a different gender, and then 84% chance to a KO. Like, this is another thing about base powers. Okay, so actually you learn about, like you learn about type matchups and then like base powers and stuff, and then you learn about deep base powers and the difference between 2-hit KOs and 2-hit KOs, because that's the weird thing. A 120 attack, a 130 attack sounds crazy, but if you're hitting a Pokemon neutrally, it's all a 2-hit KO. 120, 130, no difference. Life Orb versus a plate versus something else. Like, some Pokemon get away with the specs, others don't. Sometimes the numbers just don't change. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're over KOing by a certain percent. If you're doing 90%, it's the same as doing 55% to the enemy Pokemon. So with this, the Rivalry gamble kinda worth it. Because in certain Pokemon matchups, it's still a 2-hit KO, at least most of the time. Like, yeah, maybe you take that gamble, maybe you don't. If it's Life Orb Infernape, the trade goes really weird. But outside of that, like, yeah, you turn the ability on or off. We can, not adaptability, Aftermath, because that's not going to mess with anything. So, I mean, like, that's the numbers that it's doing. And then if it does have its ability on, and it's a male, then we're also just kind of looking at, okay, now things just doesn't want to work. There we go. Yeah, and like, even with the Rivalry, that's still a 2KO. So like, in some situations, it's always going to be the same, and in other situations, that's what pushes you to that KO chance if you stumble into the male. So, Rivalry viable, Intimidate viable, Guts viable. The hell is this Pokemon? And then, if you want to be disgusting and you don't want to have my respect, there's this moveset. I'm gonna cover everything, kind of, also ignore the -4. Because, like, you can't have a timid or jolly nature if you're going for the Volt Switch, because then you just start hurting yourself for coverage, so hasty or naive. The idea for hasty being you're eating an earthquake and dying anyways, so you might as well die effectively the same, or just not get KO'd by a neutral physical hit, because numbers and math is weird. Christ, like, where are we even more? So yeah, like, here's the thing. I don't respect switch moves like U-turn, Volt Switch. I don't consider those good, except in like weird scenarios. It's free damage on the 95 special attack, and in a lot of other Pokemon, I feel like you're sacrificing moveset, or just, you shouldn't. Like, if your goal is to hit and run, your strategy is flawed. So you just need a better strategy where you don't have to be put in that situation. But Luxray is more deliberate. Luxray is Intimidate, Volt Switch. I'm doing damage, I'm going into a beneficial switch, your physical Pokemon is now permanently hurt. Okay, And it also has, like, Choice Scarf options where it's like, nah, I just outspeed your Gyarados and then I one-shot on Discharge. Or I have, like, Fire Fang pressure and Ice Fang hits. And I don't know. Do you run this on the special attack so your Volt Switch Discharge sticks for the most damage? Or do you just go attack? That way your Volt Switch Wild Charge, Fire Fang, Ice Fang, is kind of like where we're running here and just looking for those supers and crazy hits and stuff like that. I don't know. But the hit and run damage on this, again, you just outspeed everything and you trade and it gets weird and you make the opponent's Pokemon kind of worthless, especially if you're going into a fat physical Pokemon like Hippowdon. You just get away with things. And then, like, you just come out ahead on damage, and however many times Luxray is able to get away with that, it switches back in. Now that Pokemon's -2, maybe you bait it into, like, a resisted hit or just a really weak neutral hit, and then Luxray is free for Choice Scarf shenanigans from there. It's an idea. I still think that Volt Switch and U-Turn are trash, but have maybe some kind of weirdness going. Like, if you do this to me, I'm just hitting a stockpile and then you're losing the game. Like, that's how I see this moveset. So it kind of, again, it limits your strategy, but against, like, if we're getting a Swords Dance meta, I don't know what this does to Dragon Dance. I don't think it's fast enough to counter Dragon Dance super hard. But, like, if things are happening in the game and you just do this, okay, cool. Like, it's an idea. It's some kind of cheese to make Luxray work. And with Luxray's, it needs whatever it can to work. And then we have Guts Flame Orb Facade. Too slow. Too slow to make deliberate Guts work, which is why I'm feeling like Guts is reserved for if the meta throws something weird. Again, like Toxic Spikes, who even gets it and why? Not a lot of Pokemon, not a lot of reason. Like if Fortress, like it used to just be Shenanigans Fortress, where you go like Stealth Rock, Spikes, Toxic Spikes, Explosion. Brr, cool, do whatever you want, man. Sturdy, still to play. I haven't even heard any whispers of Fortress, even though it was Ferrothorn before Ferrothorn. Yeah, like, I don't know, if Toxic, like, I think players have evolved beyond Toxic Spikes. Even if we ignore the thing about poison Pokemon absorbing the Toxic Spikes, I think we've gone past that. Next, we just need, and also the cool thing about Pokemon Sword and Shield is that we started evolving out of hazards. Like, people just realized the taunt is better than any hazard if you're trying to go for, like, setup or anti-setup, because then you just get it set up against on a free turn on Stealth Rocks. So that's just trash. Don't do it ever. And then there's just, like, some other things going on. So, yeah, like, depending on what the meta is. I don't see Toxic Stalling being a thing. Will-O-Wisp maybe becomes, like, popular because of Dragon Dance and Swords Dance being very scary. But there's sometimes a sub just packed next to that, so the Will-O-Wisp starts to not have an effect. Yeah, it's like, chance for 1.5, better chance for 1.25, but also kind of gets screwed over on damage rolls that don't matter. And then Intimidate's always good, but not as powerful as either of those when they pop off. So you're going to be in, like, the biggest problem... Wow, I just tripped super hard on that. Biggest problem with Luxray is that it feels like you're probably just going to have the wrong ability every time. Like, one of these abilities is winning. Whatever your Luxray is using is just wrong, because Luxray has problems. But as we can see, it can overcome those problems and be surprising. Probably just gets super clapped and walled by tanks to where it doesn't even, like, it just doesn't exist as a Pokemon. But as we saw, it's anti-sweeping. Staggeringly strong. Like, bafflingly strong. But also, strangely weak. I was thinking, like, okay, let's ignore the Wild Charge because it does put you at risk. Or let's say you get into, like, some kind of weird crunch scenario where it's better to use Scarf Crunch just in case they got some ground-type Pokemon or something. Starmie doesn't get one-shot by the Crunch neutrally and is genderless, so you don't get the rivalry. The Guts is unreliable and it's unaffected by the Intimidate. So even though you have the outspeed on Starmie, doesn't seem like it means anything. Now, what about the Gengar? And that's the problem with 120. You see 120, and, like, you compare that. So I'm pretty sure 120 attack stacks up pretty aight. Maybe not. But it's also still, like, better than most. It's like, yeah, you think, like, oh, Garchomp's got, like, 130 something, so 120 is not too far behind. You know, that's still got to be good. But then... even, like, non-stab super effectives and a 120 of a stat, not guaranteed KOs. Not high KO potential, especially if you're running the Scarf. So that's like that's the wiggle room where the game gets kind of weird and ugly. Electivire, yeah, so then we'll just start talking about some of these other Pokemon at some point. Yeah, like Garchomp's 130, and it's like, oh man, Garchomp slaps. That's the difference between 130 and 120. 130 is the neutral super effective KO, 120 isn't. Luxray looks strong, but also has very, very big vulnerabilities. I don't know. I think I was right. I put a B tier on my tier list. Right? Aha! Good boy. Ah! Frick. That's what I mean. I'm like, I think there's enough here for it to be B tier. But maybe it's secretly C tier. Or maybe it's C tier, secretly B tier. I guess we're gonna have to see how it plays out. Like, because another thing is, a Pokemon can be B tier on paper, but if there's a million other B tier Pokemon ahead of it, then it just falls in the tier list. Like, so is there just better options than Luxray, or does Luxray do something that other Pokemon don't? We're gonna find out. So I'm gonna readjust to B tier and hope for the best. But I'm still gonna see like maybe Honchkrow is my secret A tier, the OP that is like the sleeper OP. So yeah, it's Luxray, guys. It's Pokemon. I don't know. It's promising, but we have to see it in battle, and then maybe it's just I. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.